And Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, who's been speaking out on this issue quite a lot, has done an interview where he's, well, basically moved ahead of what we expect to be announced at Tory Party conference by Kemi Badenoch to talk about how we should have a decade of net emigration, not immigration, more people leaving the country than coming in, to try and basically reclaim the country to people who've already live here. Let's talk about this with public policy specialist Lucy White. A very good morning to you.
Hi, Julia. Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. Well, I mean, this would be interesting. I mean, remember 2010, well, you probably don't, but I'm old enough to remember 2010 when David Cameron said they would get net migration down to the tens of thousands. And it's basically ballooned to, I think it was 800,000 in one of the most recent years. And that meant we actually had 1.2 million people more, people arriving in the country, and there were people leaving, but we ended up with more than 800,000 more people in the country. In some areas, 1 or 2% more of the people have arrived in the local population in the last year. It's been an unprecedented increase. What do you make of Robert Jenrick suggesting we should actually not just cut immigration, but we actually have net emigration?
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I think we definitely need a decade of net emigration because we cannot cope and sustain these levels. We recently saw that Jenrick welcomed but also criticised Reform's plan of 600,000 leaving in the first term, i.e. the first 5 years. But I think we all know that we need to go much beyond that. And as you said, Julia, so in 2023, we had a gross migration levels of 1.22 million entering the country. And we know that 85% of those were from non-EU countries. And what's interesting is Jenrick actually criticised Priti Patel. He criticised her.
She's the Shadow Foreign Secretary.
Immigration. Yes, exactly. So Jenrick openly criticised Priti Patel, which I think that will bring some sparks at the Conservative Party conference.
Yeah.
Because, under Priti Patel's points-based system, she essentially removed caps on immigration and opened the floodgates.
Well, yeah, and again, the Prime Minister at the time, of course, was Boris Johnson, that Boris wave. I mean, absolutely the opposite of what every single government has been elected on since 2010 onwards. I mean, it's just, not that we were ever asked, by the way, by Tony Blair in his years about the mass immigration. And we're constantly told we are a nation of immigrants. I mean, we're literally not. I mean, we're the opposite of that. This country's had an almost entirely stable population for centuries with tiny levels of immigration. And certainly in the post-war years, we had net emigration. More people left places to go to, like America and Canada and New Zealand and Australia and others. More people left than actually arrived in this country. I think this would certainly be something there'd be a lot of support for. But the key thing is, I think a lot of people feel they do want the mass deportations because they, the people who arrived here illegally or have come here legally and then overstayed their visas, sometimes by decades, have no right to be here.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Julia. I couldn't agree more. And I think the other issue is that not only were some people entering legally on visas, but they could bring an influx of dependents.
Yes.
And those dependents didn't even need to speak English and they didn't need to have any skills. So this is also what the huge issue was. I mean, if you look at the health and care social worker visa, there were more dependents than the actual healthcare workers themselves, which just shows you, okay, so, and all these dependents, where are the school places, the NHS support?
And then we're told they're a net economic benefit to us, when of course if you're paying for your kids to go to school and and often still needing housing benefit because you're not earning enough, which they're entitled to after a little while, on what basis are you going to be a net benefit and a net contributor to this country? It is quite extraordinary, the lies that we've been told. And again, even if someone's working hard, that's great, but we've got quite a few million unemployed people in this country who could be doing those jobs instead, who are already living here. Perhaps we should get them to work, but there we are. Let's also talk about the cases. I mean, look, I think everyone's been very much focused on people who've arrived on the boats, and particularly alleged criminality in some cases, and proven criminality of people who've come to this country illegally, or even those who've come legally but then ended up staying. But extraordinary story about a migrant called Moffat Conophilia. He's age 48. He was living on the Bibi Stockholm barge in Dorset when he carried out a sexual assault on a 17-year-old girl. attempted to kiss her twice on the lips and distressing her. He said he'd never been so close to a white woman. He amazingly has avoided, he was found guilty following a trial. On Wednesday, he avoided prison after he begged magistrates not to send him to jail because he needed to support his wife and children. Maybe he should have thought about that before he tried to kiss a 17-year-old girl. But he also thanked the UK for looking after me. He says, the British are looking after me. Accommodation, food, I can give the whole lot. Thank you. I appreciate Great Britain for looking after me. Doesn't he appreciate it enough to not sexually assault one of the girls from Great Britain, though, did he?
Yeah, exactly. I think my two main takeaways from this particular case is that, number one, he was only given 18 months of community service and 60 hours of unpaid work, which is essentially about a week of unpaid work.
Yeah.
So firstly, the punishment is not enough. And secondly, if you actually look into this case, he's actually from, I believe, the Solomon Islands,
Yep.
which is a tiny, tiny island by Australia.
Yep.
It's located in the Southwest Pacific Ocean. And it's not a war-torn country. It's actually a beautiful island where many people go for holiday. So if you look at our asylum system and the Home Office, they should review his case of the Solomon Islands and say, okay, this is not a legitimate asylum seeker.
Yeah.
He can quite easily go back to the Solomon Islands. And given the distance of the Solomon Islands to the United Kingdom, it begs to question, how did he get here in the first place? Probably on a plane, Julia, not on a boat.
Yeah, indeed. But it's extraordinary that he claimed there's a danger for his family if he goes to prison. My wife is just a housewife. I'm an asylum seeker, but still look for money to feed them. If I go to prison, my family is going to go hungry. I'm prepared to work. I'll comply with anything. I've never committed any offence in England. Well, yeah, you've been here 3 years. You followed a 17-year-old girl to the beach and started making sexual advances to her, tempted to kiss her. Yeah, I'm sure it was the first time, mate, and you've been an absolutely, above board great citizen of this country to this point. I mean, none of it adds up, and this is just the latest story. We've had allegations. We've got some cases still going through court about people living in asylum hotels. We've got some where there have been charges have been brought. We've got some cases where there's already been proven allegations and people have been found guilty. And the British public just had enough. It's as simple as that. Thank you so much, Lucy White. I appreciate that. Philip Ingham, final quick word on this?
Well, yes, it's interesting. Solomon Islands, there's no threat there, and if he's sending money to his family, he can't work. So he's working illegally.